What's going on, everybody? What's going on, my SB community? I want to welcome you back to Knicks Deli. Shout out to you all for being here with me. I want to thank you first and foremost for being patient with me as I had to postpone this presentation. I was out on Long Island spending time with some of the family and lost track of the time. So I was too far away from the studio to get it in, but we are getting it in this morning. Thank you for sharing that time with me.
Knicks Deli Edition.
Knicks Deli Edition. And it's a special one for me because if you follow the channel, you know that I have a little bit of a love-hate / respect relationship with Carmelo Anthony. 100% recognizes his contribution, and we're going to talk about that today. But I was excited to do this video because I think my perspective on Carmelo Anthony is often understood, especially by you young bucks. Young bucks who are really, strong part of Carmelo Anthony Nation. I think you misunderstand me in terms of my comments on Carmelo, me not necessarily having wanted to come back, even to spend time on the bench. I just think it was time to move forward. And many of you called me a hater. Many of you called me the ops. But we're going to clear that up today. Because what I wanted to do is just give an honest look back through my eyes. So many of you, as you watch this, fill the blank yourself. If there's a little bit, something that you may think is off, put it in the chat. You know, friend or foe, I want the smoke. But it ain't about the smoke today. It's about facts, and it's about clarifying. So today, I want to afford the proper respect to Hall of Famer, Star Melo Anthony. And the title of this particular video is Made You Look. Because if nothing else, Carmelo Anthony has carried himself in a way in this NBA during his career where you couldn't overlook him. He made you look, whether it was his talent on the court, whether it was his giving back to his community off of the court, whether it was being one of the first, being the first in that big three, that draft class, to lift his voice and speak out against social injustice and be able to have you think it was LeBron James, and be able to have you think it was that moment on the ESPYs where Carmelo Anthony and LeBron James and Dwayne Wade stood side by side to speak out. But it wasn't. It was Carmelo Anthony, and we're going to talk about that as well. But before I get into that, you already know, I want to just shout out to those people who are going to be viewing this video. Shout out to the people who want to be in the chat. I know people will trickle in, or people will watch this video into perpetuity. Okay? But I want to tell you I appreciate you. If you're here for the first time, salute to you. I want to thank you for joining me. If this is a new video for you, I hope you enjoy it. And I hope it encourages you to go check out my other videos because I be spitting that fire. All right? If you're returning to the channel, my SB community, you already know we roll deep. Welcome back. Welcome back. And as always, if you get out of pocket, we circling the block. We dropping bombs, and we circling the block, and we spinning. So roll with us. Thank you for rocking with me always, okay? Now you know you can't have those people who support you. You can't have those people who love what it is that you do if you ain't got the people who hate. And those people are going to be in the comment section, commenting and sectioning. And for those people, I got this question for you. Do you know where you are? Do you know who you rocking with? You rocking with the best, baby. But I want to welcome you to my channel anyway. Do me a favor, hit that like button or that not like button because it's all engagement. Friend or foe, we want the smoke. So even if there's something you disagree with, put it in the comment section. I don't run from the smoke, just keep it respectful. I appreciate a good troll. I'm a good troll myself. So without further ado, let's dive in. So we're here to talk about our guy, Carmelo Anthony. And when you talk about Carmelo Anthony and you ask the fan base, you may ask 7 different people and you may get 7 different responses. But what I wanted to do is afford this opportunity to use this moment in this platform to give my thoughts on my guy Melo. All right. And I wanted to kind of do a quick synopsis, a quick timeline in terms of how I was introduced to Carmelo and just my overall feeling about what his career has meant in my eyes as it relates to our Knicks. All right. So just ride with me, rock with me. I may draw it out a little bit, but that's just, this is for the dramatic effect. All right. So first and foremost, let me do this. Let me not do anything else before I congratulate Carmelo Anthony on a stellar career that he surely will find himself in the Hall of Fame. So I don't want to do anything else without saying that. Give this man his proper props, proper respect. Multiple time NBA All-Star, multiple time NBA All-Team, legendary player, probably the best international player in the history of international basketball, and that's saying a huge amount. His reach and his influence goes far beyond the NBA and his contributions in the NBA. So when we think basketball and we think Basketball Hall of Fame, in many cases, there are some players who can only put up their stats and their contributions within the game on the NBA stage. But this man right here has shown he had an ability to dominate, not only in the NBA, but in the world. So with that, you have to put respect on that man's name. You have to put respect on that man's name. And I'm going to give the New York version of respect for Carmelo Anthony right now. Shout out to you. Shout out. Shout out to you, Carmelo. All right? So let's start here. When I think about my introduction to Carmelo Anthony, it was while he was in college. It was his run while he was in Syracuse. They built up momentum and they were really moving. And Jim Boeheim did a great job of talking about his young star and building him up and helping him develop while he went to college. Now, I do recall I wasn't a huge college basketball fan, but it was undeniable. Carmelo Anthony was at Syracuse. If you're in New York, Syracuse is in New York, so that was a school that he was starring at. But at the same time, they were talking about the talent that was in this draft that was upcoming. So Carmelo Anthony was setting the NCAA tournament ablaze. There was also a young player at Marquette who was doing the same for his team, building that momentum, having spots where he was shining at his school. And that young man was Dwayne Wade. But also, not even in college, there was a young man that they were putting the cape on as the next person to be the face of the NBA, to the point that they had already chosen him, called him the chosen one, and was tabbing him as King James, to be the next in line. So this was an interesting moment in time, and as you begin to think, all right, this is a great time to be one of the poor teams who'll be jockeying for the top 5 picks, because this was an outstanding class. But the facts are the facts. And Carmelo Anthony, coming out of college in that legendary draft, was the most accomplished of all 3 of those players: LeBron, D. Wade, and Carmelo, because he was able to secure the height, what everybody plays for in college. He was able to say that he was the best basketball player in the nation that year. So at that time, I remember there were multiple conversations that were being had about who was the best among them. And although they were friends, you can tell that there was a competition on a different level, and it was consistent amongst those 3. All right. This was especially true when they were trying to predict who would go in what order in that particular draft. Now, everybody had come to the general consensus that it was going to be LeBron James. You could see his all-around game. You could see that he was a phenom at a young age. No college experience was going to forego that college experience and go directly into the league. So much expectations and hype on this man, the most in NBA history. But people felt that he had the ability and the skill set to reach and possibly exceed. Actually, there were people who was doubting whether or not LeBron would reach and match the hype that he came in with. All right? But Melo was considered one of the best in the nation. And he sat on top of the college basketball world as the best. But they all went on to their own teams. And they all had expectations that they were going to be the ones to carry their respective teams into the near future. And ultimately what's happened is they didn't disappoint. They didn't disappoint when it came to that. These three young men, whether it was Carmelo Anthony with the Denver Nuggets, Dwayne Wade with the Miami Heat, or LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers, you could tell that they were screen watching after their games, or maybe before their games, to see what the other player was doing. And each of them performed at levels of professionals and men who were veterans in the league. Carmelo Anthony brought a unique combination of speed, athleticism, power, and scoring ability. And those aren't really my words. Those are the words of the GOAT, one of the GOATs, Kobe Bryant. Okay? When you think about LeBron James brought a different type of ability to the table. But we're going to get into that in a few moments. Carmelo would ultimately join a team where he would help his team lead his team to the conference finals when he was in Denver. All right. It's funny, as I reflected on putting this piece together, I thought back to a conversation I would have with my cousin, Prestige New York. Follow him on Twitter if you are interested, or if you're a big fan of hip hop. I love his takes on hip hop, and he gives those on Twitter. Prestige New York. Follow him. But we used to always go in on basketball. He was a great basketball player himself in high school. I was Charles Oakley, so I had about 4-inch vertical off the ground, and I'd hit you with a foul. So don't drive the lane on me. Okay, and I'll hit that occasional jump shot. Water. All right, but we would have these conversations, especially at that time. He was huge. I mean, still to this day, he's a huge Carmelo Anthony fan, a huge Carmelo Anthony defender. Although Melo don't need defending, but he's a huge Carmelo Anthony defender. But very early on, we would have conversations about the two players. It had to be at least the first year or the second year. And I remember having a debate with my cousin about who we would prefer to build a team around. And he would say Carmelo Anthony, and I would say LeBron James. Okay. I said LeBron James because I saw how he made the players around him better. I remember his first few games with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay. And he had players on his team that was like, young fella's going to have to learn how to play. He's not going to come in. And so it was almost like they was hating that this young kid is going to come in. He's coming in with all this hype that he's supposed to be the next one. There's already people here. There's already people here at his position. Y'all giving him the reins, and he ain't going to take it. Like, veterans ain't going to relinquish those reins. Well, you know what? LeBron James came in and he took them. He came in and he took them. You know what I mean? Like, there was no question about it. And he ultimately gained respect. And if you see the highlights from the very first game, it was I will never forget, it was against the Sacramento Kings. It was against the Sacramento Kings, and he was picking them apart. He was putting pressure on the rim, his skill set at his height. He was a man amongst boys. And this was a team with veterans. I'm talking Vlade. But then if you watch Carmelo play, my cousin had a point as well. Carmelo was dominant. Players did not, even to this day, you hear a Paul Pierce talk about not wanting to guard Melo. You hear Kobe Bryant in many of his interviews at the end of his career talk about Carmelo being an absolute monster. He was just like, yo, listen, if there's one player that'll make you feel him, it's Carmelo Anthony. It's Carmelo Anthony. So that's one thing we would always talk about. Who is the better player? Who would you start a team around. But ultimately, it came down to looking at all three of these players, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, and LeBron James, and understanding that these three will forever be connected and intertwined with each other from having come from the same draft, for being good friends, and for possessing high-level basketball abilities. But you got to understand this as well. You got to understand this as well. When you're talking about three friends who are playing at the highest level of basketball, okay, it's going to be competitive. Any group of friends or anyone who's competitive at a high level, you want to be the best. And to start early off in all of their careers, Dwayne Wade was the first to win a championship in Miami, with Hall of Famer Shaquille O'Neal leaving the Los Angeles Lakers and teaming up in Miami with the young star. Pat Riley, goddammit, Pat Riley is the man to have enough foresight to be able to trade for the big fella and help Dwayne Wade begin his career of excellence, his Hall of Fame career. But Dwayne Wade was the first to strike. And of course, this would give him bragging rights over the other two, as he was the one to first taste the gold. And of course, his team was in Miami. So now that's a double win. Not only are you the first to win the chip, God damn it, you doing it in Miami. You doing it in Miami, bro. If that ain't the biggest flex, I don't know what is. So you know that both LeBron James and Carmelo Anthony, they were happy for their boy. They were happy for their friend. But you can also rest assured that they had to be thinking to themselves, how can I get my team in this position to win it all as well? Right? Now, as we have the benefit of retrospect right now, to be able to look in that rearview mirror into the past. I apologize, TV in the background. But in recent years, it was revealed that there were early conversations had between Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and Carmelo Anthony to one day team up together and play together. And it was early on. And what I will say is, I'll give him credit. LeBron James has always had that business mind. He's always had that thought process towards, what is my legacy going to look like in this league? How can we make this thing work for me? Okay? So Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and Carmelo Anthony talked about one day teaming up and playing together, and how great it would be for them to team up and win a championship together. If that would have happened, it would have been Thanos. It would have been a Thanos snap. We thought the Miami Big Three was dominant with Chris Bosh, and this ain't a shot at Chris Bosh. Imagine what that would have looked like if Carmelo Anthony had been part of that crew. Imagine that. This was most impressive because it was said that this conversation was had in the first few years of their career. So this would mean that they would all have had to agree not to pick up the second extensions, to sign a 3-year deal, actually, so that they can explore free agency together. That was unheard of at that time. So of the three, all Hall of Fame players, it's not a secret that LeBron, being the number one pick and possessing the most impressive, comprehensive set of skills, shout out to the movie Taken, also has always had this mind for designing what his legacy is going to be like. I always say that he is the most contrived basketball legend ever. He never does anything without putting thought into it. And here he was figuring out how he could best control his destiny. Now, when we think about Carmelo Anthony, him having experienced a championship on the collegiate level, at that time, it was my sense that Carmelo felt that he still wanted to prove that he could lead a team to a championship in the NBA. And that if he moved along with this plan of a big three that LeBron and Dwayne was kind of proposing, I think he felt like he wouldn't be able to thrive the way he wanted to or grow like he may have envisioned. All right. So I think he could have, it's also possible he could have been a little bit about his paper. All right. And because we have the benefit of hindsight, let me show you a little bit where that has some truth to it. So here we see that Carmelo Anthony actually admits that this was a conversation that was had, that this was an absolute conversation that was had. So Stephen A. Smith asked him, he asked him about conversations that he had with LeBron James and Dwayne Wade leading up to the 2010 offseason. So Carmelo Anthony would say it was, take the 3-year deal. Take the 3-year deal and let's see what happens. At that point in time, I was so naive to any of that. I didn't know the business of basketball back then. I didn't know what it meant to take a 3-year deal opposed to a 5-year deal. I'm not leaving 2 years worth of money on the table. He said, I'm not looking at it like that. He was thinking, I'm not leaving 2 years of money on the table. So a lot of people have argued in the past that one of Carmelo's biggest Achilles heels is that he does things for the money. He doesn't think in terms of having long-term vision, a long-term goal, and having some level of foresight. He thinks presently what's in the now and how he could cash out and get his dough. Unfortunately for him, that would kind of alter how his career would turn out. All right. We see at this point in time, LeBron was thinking that way. So with that being said, Carmelo would decide to sign his extension in Denver, thus disrupting the alignment of all three, becoming unrestricted free agents at the same time. Carmelo's competitive streak was revealed. He was part of an upcoming talented team in Denver and probably thought he didn't want to team up to win a championship. He wanted to be able to beat Dwayne Wade and LeBron in order to get his chip. All right. So this left that opening for LeBron to consider the decision that he made in 2010. All right. And Carmelo would later on respond this way. He said, immaturity, growth from that situation. From a business standpoint, not understanding where the game was going at that particular time, and still having this street mentality of, I'm not leaving no money on the table. He didn't truly understand there was going to be a lockout and what the lockout meant at that point in time. He said he loved Denver. He said he also wanted to be in Denver, but he wasn't ready to leave Denver. Okay? So that's the man in his own words. He really wasn't thinking long term. He was thinking immediate, and he felt like he had a good enough team. All right? So let's fast forward to ultimately what turns out to be the decision. Okay? So ultimately, the decision and how this impacted Carmelo Anthony. So this left that opening for LeBron to consider making the decision in 2010 when he took his talents to South Beach. He had a choice to make, and Dwayne Wade happened to be in position to team up with LeBron at that time. This sucked because they wanted to team with Melo, but that was no longer an option. They needed one other person to join them. They needed one other person to join them during that time. So initially, the word on the street is that it was Amari Stoudemire. My apologies. Yeah, so initially it was thought that it would be Amari Stoudemire to join LeBron James and Dwayne Wade. But ultimately, it turned out to be Chris Bosh. So Chris Bosh would join LeBron James and Dwayne Wade, and they all would decide to team up and play in Miami. All right? Now, still formidable and still dominant. But this sucked because they wanted to team with Melo. That was no longer an option. It was no longer an option. And this was according to Amari, that Amari said they reached out to him and it was something that was a little bit off with his contract that he couldn't get out of. And then, not to say, once again, there's no shots at Chris Bosh, but ultimately he was the one available and able to step in at that time. He was a star in and of itself in Toronto. He was giving cats buckets and leading that team in Toronto. But he made a decision to join them, and we see how it turned out. This move took the NBA world by storm. And it left a lot of teams wondering how they're going to deal with this new force that was in Miami. But meanwhile, for Carmelo Anthony in Denver, things were starting to look shaky. All right. Carmelo Anthony realized that the team, after they reached the conference finals, would quickly pivot and begin a process of actually rebuilding just shortly after they reached the Western Conference Finals. And this was something that was baffling to Carmelo. He was not pleased about it. He started hearing the murmuring of the media catching wind of him and George Karl going at it, and that their relationship was being questioned. Also, this would lead Carmelo Anthony to ultimately request a trade. And that also sent shockwaves through the NBA. You know, it perked the ears up of Madison Square Garden. So ultimately, when it was determined that Carmelo had his eyes set on the Empire State, it happened to also coincide with Brooklyn Nets recently relocating to Brooklyn and then into the Barclays. All right. So Carmelo would specifically narrow his choices down to the New York Knicks or the Brooklyn Nets. He was really determined to get out of Denver. And this would be part of the problem that I kind of had with him. All right, but we're going to get into that. Aside from lighting up the NBA world, his request also drew the attention of New York Knicks owner James Dolan, who had in place a team that helped reorganize and get fiscally responsible in the front office space and on the coaching bench. So this was Donnie Walsh and Mike D'Antoni. At that point in time, James Dolan did a great job of bringing Donnie Walsh in, a league respected, executive known for being able to stabilize and turn around an organization. He brought him in, and Donnie Walsh did just that. Mike D'Antoni was just starting to get the young pieces, the under-talented pieces on his team to play together and see results because they were finally buying into his system. Yet, rumors were still abound around that time that James Dolan had believed that LeBron would choose New York in 2010 when he was thinking about his decision. And similar to KD, prior to KD's Achilles tear, when he was in Golden State, the rumors were out there that KD was looking at the New York Knicks. And then at the last minute, he changed the course. Well, it's alleged that the same thing happened with LeBron James. And LeBron does everything cryptically. So he would mention something along those lines. He said he reflected on the free agency meeting, and LeBron eventually revealed that leaving that meeting, he had doubts about the health of the organization and their inability to get other stars to team up with him in New York. And that's what happens when your financials aren't in order and you do a failed job of communicating the vision of what it's going to look like for that megastar to be in your city. All right. So now Carmelo Anthony stating his interest in MSG, Dolan was like, I'm committed to not being burned again. So when that opportunity became available, James Dolan decided to step in. And he said, I strongly encourage you to make this happen. I strongly encourage you to make this happen. Because you have an experienced executive, Donnie Walsh did pull back respectfully. He did push back respectfully. I know this is how the conversation went. Donnie Walsh was just like, I hear you, but respectfully, I gotta say this. We just went through 2 years of belt tightening. I just told this fan base that be patient with us as we get these things together. All right, I just got through having this fan base endure a lot of the losing that they've endured for the first time in a long time, intentionally, so that we could get our books and everything together. And what you're telling me right now is throw all that out the window to get Carmelo Anthony here. And you know, Mike D'Antoni was saying the same thing. He was just like, yo, I just got these young players that we drafted. They're not all super talented, but they're playing together. They're young, they're athletic, and they're buying into the system. You really want me to ship most of them out when this young man can wait until the summertime, 6 months from now, to become a free agent and join us, and then have this built around him? They'll already have that experience of playing together. And we see what experience of playing together is doing for our young cats today. Basically, D'Antoni was saying like, yo, yo, come on, man, let them gel and then join us in the summertime. All right. So both Walsh and D'Antoni agreed that if Melo could just wait 6 months, he could join the team with this young core, and the organization would still be in good fiscal health and take steps towards long-term sustainable winning. All right. And that's another reason why LeBron James may have been spot on when he shunned us to go to Miami, because he's saying they didn't look like they were good in good organizational health. And for James Dolan to swoop in and make that decision to get Carmelo to come here, as opposed to having him wait 6 months, then LeBron seemed to be proven right. All right. And that's another reason that I feel that LeBron didn't come to New York, is because he realized that he wouldn't be able to wield the amount of power that he is shown to be able to wield in other places, such as Cleveland, Miami, and LA. That was actually one of the main reasons that is alleged that he left Miami, because Pat Riley had an iron hand on what was going on down there. So he went to places where he could have a little bit more influence. All right. So all of that made sense by the front office. But when Carmelo Anthony began hearing those rumors about the possibility of going to New York being held off because they wanted him to wait until the summertime, then Carmelo Anthony made a move that first raised my eyebrow and gave me doubt, like, yo, come on, bro, are you serious? So Carmelo went to the media and he said, listen, what's happening here is irreparable. I'm done in Denver. I already asked for my request for a trade. It's not going to work here if I stay. If New York can't make the moves to get me, then I'll go to Brooklyn. And Carmelo Anthony knew exactly what he was doing, bro. You know what you're doing. You know what you're doing when you put that out there, and this man is listening. Bro, you know what you're doing. James Dolan was just like, hell no. Hell no. Hell no. Ain't no way y'all letting this other team that just moved in here talking smack, talking about they got the blueprint for greatness. Ain't no way I'm letting Carmelo Anthony go there when he's made it clear that he wants to come to the New York Knicks. Donnie Walsh, you better get it together. Mike D'Antoni, you better suck it up. I want Carmelo Anthony here. And ultimately, that's what happened. You know, he couldn't see anything else than having Carmelo Anthony in Madison Square Garden. So this was all that James Dolan needed to hear. He refused to be shafted again, and especially by the team who just moved into his own city. At that point, James Dolan interceded and told Mike D'Antoni and Donnie Walsh, make the deal. Make the deal by any means necessary. Get Carmelo Anthony in the orange and blue. So ultimately goes out Wilson Chandler, goes out Danilo Gallinari, and several other fringe players. And then comes Carmelo Anthony. To a hero's welcome. Shout out. Carmelo Anthony now arrives in the city. City is on fire, you know. And now you have that trio that's in Miami, and then you have Carmelo Anthony in New York. All right. And New York did get a star. You know, Carmelo Anthony, everything about Carmelo Anthony is glitz, glamour, stardom. It's stardom. Okay. New York fans finally had their star, and the city was on fire. All right. Carmelo would ultimately join Amari Stoudemire and eventually Tyson Chandler. While I'm looking at the man, I don't even know his name. He joined Amari Stoudemire, Tyson Chandler, you know? And there was this excitement around Carmelo Anthony and the possibility to build around him, all right? And you remember even when he came, he had the I'm coming home, I'm coming home, coming home. You know, so the funniest part about that campaign is that Carmelo Anthony's from Baltimore. You know what I mean? The man is from Maryland. But because he played in Syracuse, and Melo always identified with New York, he always had that spirit of New York in him. But I just found that funny to be, you know, that was a major part of the marketing scheme, talking about, I'm coming home, and the man was from Baltimore. So ultimately, he would join Amari Stoudemire, and then he would join Tyson Chandler. Amari was already here, and Amari had really, you know, whether it was for money reasons or not, he took on that challenge of playing in New York, being that first star to sign, even though his knees were questionable. All right. But he was saying, like, New York is back. New York is back. All right. In 2020. But when Carmelo Anthony got there, they just never really had an opportunity to gel. They never really had an opportunity to gel. I think there were so many reasons why. You know, D'Antoni and Amari, you know, they peanut butter and jelly. They far from oil and water. They peanut butter and jelly. Amari got his name and fame. D'Antoni got his name and fame. They got it off each other. So when you bring Carmelo in, you probably could sense that Melo was aware of that. Yo, we know that's your coach, you know, but everything is not matching up. You know, so the Knicks then pulled off the shocker, and they were able to pry Tyson Chandler from the Dallas Mavericks. Right after Tyson Chandler just won a championship with the Dallas Mavericks. That's right, F you, Mark Cuban. F you. That's why you mad at us today. That was a surprise shocker that the New York Knicks were able to secure and sign Tyson Chandler from the Dallas Mavericks. Okay? So you had those three formidable, talented players in New York. So everything was looking up. And this was all right, but it didn't quite fit. And ultimately what would happen is there would be injuries, about rumors of clashes between Melo's ISO style and D'Antoni's 7 seconds or less, kick the ball around and shoot three-pointer style. All right? So ultimately this led to us being a middle-of-the-road type of team. We were legitimately a middle-of-the-road type of team. One of those injuries came to Carmelo Anthony, so we lost a good amount of time with him on the bench. The team was middling, and as a last-ditch effort, Mike D'Antoni looked down the bench, and he called out Jeremy Lin's name. Yeah. So he called out this young man named Jeremy Lin. All right? And basically, he was just like, all right, get in there, man. Just run, just see what you can do, you know? And if you watched any of the documentaries, Jeremy Lin said he remembered that day. And he remembered his agent told him, if you get an opportunity to get in the game, bro, play like your life depends on it, because it does. And play like you don't give a F, like they're going to cut you anyway. So you need to go in there and be saucy. You need to put up shots. You need to do whatever you need to do to make your impression on whatever the next team is going to be that's going to be looking to sign a point guard. And ultimately, that's what happened. Birthed was Linsanity. All right? Jeremy Lin didn't disappoint. You know, he set the world on fire. Not just New York. You know, he was on magazines. We had nonstop coverage on ESPN. Of course, basketball is a global game, and it is stupidly huge in China. So any fans, basketball fans from the Asiatic, you know, portions of the world were locked in on New York. New York was at the eye of the basketball world. And Jeremy Lin, for that brief stretch, game after game, was not disappointing. And once again, it began leading to little victories. So you started seeing the players who were active and uninjured on the court sharing this run with Jeremy Lin. The team dynamic seemed to be a little bit more cohesive. You remember him and who's the other rookie that we had? He's also an executive, I think, in Atlanta right now. But they had the little celebration, the little nerdy ass celebration. The books, reading. The books, reading. You know what I mean? Amari was playing the big brother role because he was benefiting from a lot of the pick and roll, which was the offense. He let Jeremy Lin know, I got your back. Yo, the team was for Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin's impact on the team was for winning. And all along on the sideline, kind of injured or sometimes not at the games, the rumors were about that Carmelo Anthony was a little bit salty. Rumors were about that Carmelo Anthony was a little bit salty about this Jeremy Lin sanity thing. You know, sometimes they would ask Melo, you know, how you think? And Melo was also always a professional in the media and everything, but you could see a little bit of the salt when he talked about, oh, you know, I just think, you know, we playing better as a team. I don't think it has anything to do with a particular, like, come on, man. Be a little bit effusive in your praise. You know, we may have found a point guard that can get us in where we need to fit in. But the truth of the matter is when Carmelo Anthony got injured and he had to sit out, then Mike D'Antoni saw that as his opportunity with Lin playing at the level he was playing in to show that his system works. When you pass the ball and you share the ball and you run the style that he's intending to run. Eventually, Jeremy Lin became symbolic of successful Mike D'Antoni in New York. And now Carmelo Anthony was looking like the symbol of the team's failure in New York when you don't run a D'Antoni system. So I could understand why the saltiness is there. And I'll be honest with you, and this is not to take a shot because this is about Carmelo Anthony, but it gave me, yeah, I know, bro. Come on now. Be looking at me like that. It gave me, well, first off, here's some proof that I wasn't the only one feeling this way. All right. Here is an article that says Carmelo Anthony reportedly jealous of Linsanity, ran Jeremy Lin out of New York. He said, did New York Knicks star Carmelo Anthony run Mike D'Antoni and Jeremy Lin out of the Big Apple? If you read Tim Keown's excellent piece on Anthony in this piece, so even there was topics and titles that talked about writers who also felt from what they were hearing that this was the case. Okay? And this gave me Julius Obi vibes. I know I'm not crazy, and I know none of us are crazy, but this is what we continue to say. It almost seems that Julius had that same spirit Carmelo had, where you know your talents. You're an ISO player. You know, you're almost concerned about what your stats are, and you struggle with lining up you getting your stats versus getting the wins and being about the team. And it almost seems when there's anybody on your team that's pulling that attention away from you, you get a little bit tight. You get a little bit tight about it. MVP for Obi. Now all of a sudden this man is looking like this. I remember this photo. This was a photo that everybody on the team was saying, y'all fans are making too much of this. This was when Obi was going back to the bench. And that was a game in which the fans was chanting Obi. And Julius was coming from the bench and he wouldn't get out of the line of the path of walking. And I don't know if Obi didn't get out of the line as well, but they bumped shoulders mad hard on this play. Pause. They bumped shoulders mad hard on this play. And it was almost like, and Julius didn't look back to be like, my bad, son, or whatever have you. It's almost like he initiated it. Like, I see you, little ninja. You ain't the MVP. So when we was talking about that Jeremy Lin stint with Carmelo, it gave me a little bit of the Julius Obi vibes. Gave me a little bit of the Julius Obi vibes. I'm not gonna lie. All right. So let's fast forward. Let's fast forward a little bit. Okay. And nah, son, nah, I'm not wilding when I think about that. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit, and we're entering this piece when it comes to Phil Jackson. And good Lord, let me postpone that because I don't want that energy right now. But let me just wrap up this last point. So we're going to fast forward. Jeremy Lin ultimately looked into free agency. He was restricted free agency, and Houston stepped up to try to steal him back, steal him away. Okay? They put a contract there. Jeremy Lin was a little bit too smart for his own good. He tried to use that money, negotiate a contract, and leverage it for Madison Square Garden CEO James Dolan to be able to match. All right. So he thought he was kind of doing his little thing or whatever have you. And you don't realize what's happening. Who fought for Carmelo Anthony to be in New York? Who is considered the star of the team? Do you not think the front office and the ownership is going to consult with their star about moves that are made? Do you not think James Dolan contacted Carmelo Anthony about the possibility of signing Jeremy Lin as your point guard moving forward? What do you think Carmelo Anthony said? Now, I don't know any of that to be true. I'm assuming. But you can pick up just the vibes if you were present in that time. You saw all of this stuff happening and going down. It's hard to overlook. So ultimately, I thought Dolan and Melo were pretty close. So I always wondered if this affected James Dolan's decision to pass on Jeremy Lin and that offer and let him go off to Houston. And it was a ripple effect. Once that happened, D'Antoni was done. D'Antoni felt that Lin was a piece he could run the offense through. And Melo was like, nah, son, nah. You wildin'. Melo was like, nah, son, nah. You wildin'. Okay? What do I got? What we do?
Nah, son, nah. You
wildin'. That was Melo. Okay? So ultimately, D'Antoni resigns. Then Mike Woodson becomes interim. And we keep much of the same playbook that D'Antoni had, but he brought defense and accountability to the team. He was one of the first coaches that could speak to Melo the way Melo would respond back. In like his body language and his response in the media, all of that was consistent in responding in a spirit of respect to Mike Woodson. So that was good to see, and that was palpable when Mike Woodson became coach. All right. But following that, not too long after that, 2013, the New York Knicks began signing a group of veterans, aging veterans, but veterans nonetheless, to piece around Carmelo Anthony, Tyson Chandler, Amari Stoudemire. All right. These veterans were smart. These veterans were effective. And then that's when, boom, 2013 happens. The New York Knicks were going to win 50 plus games. Carmelo Anthony was told, you know what, I want you to give an effort on defense, but we got players around you to take care of that. You just go out there and do what you do. And when Carmelo was in a situation where all he got to do is body people and score, then this led to a great season. I believe it was a 54-win season for us that year, and the New York Knicks made it as far as the second round of the NBA playoffs, if not the conference. Second round, I think it was. Okay? So things begin to spiral after that in New York. Not too long after, Donnie Walsh stepped down and left. All right? Veterans begin retiring. That's when J.R. Smith came rolling in on the Uber board. And that's when I knew our season and our victories and our winning culture was over. When I saw him rolling in on the damn hoverboard, the electronic skateboard. I was just like, this mother flipper. This is not starting well. We look so undisciplined. And then you know what had to happen. You know, the owner stepped in and we went and we hired this man. Phil Jackson, Hall of Fame coach, probably the winningest coach in NBA history. six-time NBA champion. Very reputable, and I was excited for the signing when it happened. I'm not even going to hold you. I was excited for the signing. I'm like, listen, maybe we can get some of this juju from him that he's brought to so many other teams like the Lakers and like the Bulls. But one thing did stand out to me. How James Dolan at the introductory press conference mentioned that he had to repeatedly pursue Phil Jackson. And Phil Jackson repeatedly said no until James Dolan hit him with the Brent truck so much that he couldn't walk away from that amount of money. Come on, man. When you bribing somebody to come here and take on this role, what do you expect to get? What do you possibly expect to get? You get exactly what you got. So enter Phil Jackson, exit Mike Woodson, and enter the triangle. The triangle of death, the triangle of terror, the Bermuda Triangle. The bane of Carmelo Anthony's existence was that goddamn triangle. And you know that this was the beginning of the end for Melo in New York. All right? So we're going to fast forward at this point to several pieces. We're going to talk about free agency with Phil Jackson. So Carmelo Anthony got to the point, I believe, of restricted free agency. Or was it unrestricted free agency? One of the two. And I remember where Phil Jackson said he encouraged Carmelo Anthony to sign with the Chicago Bulls. He told him, he said, I think in terms of the direction that we're taking the team, I think you should go make sure you get a championship somewhere. And Carmelo Anthony took that the wrong way. Now, Chicago recruited the hell out of Carmelo Anthony. Recruited the hell out of him. Joakim Noah said he recruited the heck out of him. Taj Gibson said he recruited the heck out of him. They had the money on the Brinks truck. They had the bid poster on the side of the building. Everything. But there was one piece that was missing from this recruitment tour, and it was Derrick Rose. And although Derrick Rose was in the training facility rehabbing his knee, he was on the premises. Carmelo, at the same time Carmelo was doing the tour, he stopped by, they saw him, he dapped up. But the word on the street was that Carmelo Anthony wanted Derrick Rose to recruit him and say he wanted him here. And he felt offended when Rose didn't do that. Knowing Rose's personality is I don't do stuff like that. I just play. And I also believe, like, yo, listen, if you want to come play and be part of this, you know, like, just come. Why do I have to convince you? And that was something that left a bad taste in Carmelo Anthony's mouth. Carmelo Anthony would have been in a situation like he was in 2013, where he didn't have to do anything. And Joakim Noah was later on record saying, we told him, you don't got to play defense. Just get buckets. We'll handle the defense. But ultimately, two things determined Carmelo Anthony choosing to stay in New York and making it known he wants to stay in New York. And that's Lala becoming, having a young acting career in New York was kind of like the epicenter for her to thrive. And she's from New York. And number two, the money. The money. No one can outbid New York. So ultimately, Carmelo Anthony decided to re-up with the New York Knicks, and he also requested a no-trade clause. He requested a no-trade clause, and Phil Jackson granted it. And that was a point where I was looking at everything closely, and I said, man, Carmelo Anthony would be good, and it would give us a chance to get some breathing room and reset. So I kind of was pulling for Carmelo Anthony to just go on to Chicago, be great with Derrick Rose and those boys. I knew it would equate to a championship. They could battle Miami, all of these things. And when he signed back with New York and took up the majority of the money that took away our flexibility, I was like, yo, bro, that's selfish. That's mad selfish. You could have got the bag, you could have won a championship, but it showed me that his priorities was money and not rings. That's what that said to me. And once again, that was another notch on why I feel the way I feel about Melo today. These are little moments. That no trade clause really hung us up for a number of years. It hung us up. And then you enter in Jeff Hornacek, Derek Fisher, all these people trying to implement a system that hopefully could utilize the talents of Carmelo Anthony now. So we went from the extreme of having a run and gun where it was awkward to a system that would utilize his skill set, but now he was just like anti-triangle. Carmelo Anthony just wanted the ball and he wanted people to clear out so he could work. That's what his offense, he wanted his offense to be. And that's another notch. This is not a hit piece for Carmelo Anthony, but this is explaining the reason why I feel the way I do about Carmelo Anthony. And my budding dislike for Phil Jackson. My dislike for Phil Jackson was always there, but even more so now because he would ultimately make the posse comment about LeBron James while he was president of the New York Knicks. Yo, bro, what are you doing? Why you got other players' names in your mouth? What are you doing? So it was a whole crap show at this point in time with Carmelo Anthony on the team and Phil Jackson on the team. It was a whole crap show. But what I will say is Phil Jackson was absolutely ridiculous. He was hitting ridiculous points. Not only did he make the comment about the posse, not only did he make that comment, but he also had this ability to send messages through his friend, through the media, that would take jabs at players. And he literally was going ham on Carmelo Anthony. Always had something to say. Something would come out. He had a comment about it. He would be speaking in this cryptic code, and everybody knew it was about Carmelo Anthony. Everybody knew it. And Carmelo would pick up on it, and media would ask him about it, and he would remain professional when he responded to it. And that was the piece that really started to humanize Carmelo Anthony to me. That's when I started pulling for Carmelo Anthony, because everybody saw what Phil Jackson was doing. He was trying to make Carmelo Anthony so uncomfortable that he would waive that trade clause and ask to be sent somewhere else. And I just think Carmelo Anthony knew what Phil Jackson was trying to do, and he wasn't going for the okie doke. But to me, that's when he really started to make me sympathize and empathize with Carmelo Anthony. All right? But it also made me start paying attention to Carmelo a little bit more and what he was doing on and off of the court. Carmelo Anthony, if nothing else, you can say what you will about him being a scorer, whatever have you. I started noticing that he really was a man in the community in New York. You know, he was a great, if you wanted an example of the star on your team, you know, and how they should carry themselves and represent the organization on and off the court, in front of the media. Carmelo Anthony, in the media capital of the world, never turned down an interview. He never walked away or ran from the media. He was always professional. He always tried to do things the right way. He never overtly really came out and say, I don't like this, that, or a third. He would give the kind of cropped, trimmed response. But all of those things, man, you have to tip your hat off and say, yo, shout out to you, Melo. You know, you did represent yourself as a professional very well. All right. And there were some other things that began to crop up that made you think, you know what, I really, you know, it's easy to like this guy. And one of those things was when Melo began connecting with his Latino heritage. Many people didn't know Carmelo Anthony is Puerto Rican. His dad is Puerto Rican and his mom is African American. So he started to travel down that journey as he got a little bit older to connect with his heritage, learn a little bit more, and not only learn a little bit more, but to give back. And you started hearing about him not only building basketball courts, around America for the youth, but also going back to Puerto Rico and building basketball courts and giving camps and spending time out there as well and connecting with his heritage more. And something that I mentioned earlier in the video that really stood out to me was when the Freddie Gray incident happened in Baltimore, and the people took to the streets, and the sights of the world were fixated on Baltimore. And without really media acclaim, there was no announcement. Next thing you know, Carmelo Anthony was out there speaking to the community and marching alongside with people in his community. He didn't throw that out as an announcement. He just went and he did it. And it was the first time of that big three. And go check the record and cross-reference the dates. LeBron James likes to hold the badge in the cape as the social justice warrior of the NBA, as if he was the one that started. And there is no who started or whatever when it comes to social justice. You know, equality everywhere for everyone. Justice everywhere for everyone. But Carmelo Anthony was the first to kind of put himself out there and walk side by side with the people in his community. And what it did was it did quell a lot of the tension. To have a star of his magnitude in that community, where the community was at a boiling point, and law enforcement would have been at a boiling point as well. Carmelo Anthony, to step directly in the middle of that, did a lot, not only for the community, but for the image of the NBA. And Carmelo didn't do, and it didn't come off as contrived. Carmelo didn't come off, it didn't come off of Carmelo that he did that for the cameras. That's my main point when bringing this up, really. He was thinking about his people. He knows people still in Baltimore. He spends and he goes out there for summers. He did it because he saw in the community that he's from, there was an incident that was unacceptable that took place there. So that was another reason why I was just like, yo, you know what? Respect, super respect to you, bro. Super respect. I know I have some problems with the way that you may be maneuvering in your professional career, man, but on and off the court, your greatness is undeniable. Your greatness is undeniable. All right. But just to kind of reflect back on the Phil Jackson era, man, that's really, if we look at what positive came out of that for Melo, to me, this is where Melo earned his respect, because of the things that was happening to him. This just stood out a little bit more. It enhanced who he was as a person a little bit more. All right. Then Kristaps Porzingis was drafted. Okay. And this is where I kind of go back and forth once again with Melo, because I remember draft night. I remember the lead up. Okay. All of the comments and rumors were that Phil Jackson was falling asleep at workouts. Yo, we were in such a shit show. It was a legit shit show. There was comments that Phil Jackson was falling asleep at workouts. That we were considering this Latvian kid, you know. I don't know. It's just so much. But ultimately, we drafted Kristaps Porzingis. And the word on the street was that Carmelo Anthony wasn't in agreement with it, that he was tight about it. So it was another example to say Carmelo is not on the same page with the organization. So he was just like, yo, who is this kid? You know, we need a point guard. Why are you going to go out and get a power forward or the 7-foot kid, this, that, and the third, and he's raw? And is he going to be like every other European player that we've drafted? So there was a lot of the murmuring that went into that as well. And it's almost like, come on, we can't get on the same page. It's almost like it's impossible for us to get on the same page. So then Melo went on damage control. Once the media caught wind that Melo was disgruntled about the New York Knicks selecting Kristaps Porzingis, Madison Square Garden booing, and Melo was getting calls and saying like, yo, I don't know what's going on. That he heard it started getting the media, so he wanted to do damage control. So that's when Melo, at the beginning of, training camp, talked to the media And he said, you know what? I'm going to take KP under my wing. I'm going to be like his big brother. I'm going to be his big brother. That's not probably the best language to use when most of Kristaps' camp is his big brothers. But that was the language that was used. Then he found out KP had cornrows. KP, when he was young, had cornrows as a kid and a baby blue bandana. And he had the cornrows because he was a huge fan of Carmelo Anthony. All right. And at that point, it's say less. All right. Say, like, this is my young bro. Say less. So ultimately, I felt like this was good for both Kristaps Porzingis and Melo. KP ended up thriving because he had Melo to draw a lot of the attention. And Kristaps Porzingis ended up having a solid, rookie season as a result of it. And I think this also helped Carmelo Anthony's reputation. So it was a dual benefit for both parties involved. But the problem that would not go away is Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson kept effing with Melo. And it seemed that KP started to notice it and began being influenced by it. And this is another reason or point of contention with Melo. You do have a young player who was labeled by one of the top players in the game as a unicorn. Everybody sees the skill set. Everybody sees the size disadvantage he presents to the opposing team. You have this young player who is looking to you as his vet. And you know your power and your influence. You know if they're not going to listen to you, you have an ability to influence the young guy and maybe they'll listen to him. And all of these things, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I was there in real time, seeing it happening and wondering if it was the case because all of the actions was pointing to it being true. That his influence over Kristaps Porzingis was evident. It was palpable. It was palpable. So he felt sorry. Kristaps felt sorry for his vet. And he and his brothers seemed to listen to Melo more and more. More and more. Every time Melo expressed discontent behind the scenes, you saw it starting to emanate from Kristaps, where he started to get a little bit more arrogant and a little bit more contentious. Oh, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know. You started to see that. And I think Melo started to plant those seeds because he knew his time was numbered in New York. He knew he could no longer stay in an environment where the president of basketball operations, Phil Jackson, was making the environment so uncomfortable and so toxic for Melo. Melo would want to leave. So ultimately, Melo agreed, like, all right, I'm out there. And Melo knew his days were numbered. And KP's exit didn't come far after that. Ultimately, KP ended up missing an exit interview. Who does that as a young player? Ended up missing an exit interview with Phil Jackson when he came on. His first exit interview. He missed it. So he's already sending a message. Okay. Now, Phil Jackson was tight about that. He felt disrespected. So he was just like, yo, who the hell is this kid thinking that he could miss this exit interview? And then it snowballed from that point. And I believe, and this is my belief, and these are my beliefs that these are the words that Carmelo Anthony shared with KP. I believe he told him, he was just like, yo, bro, I'm out, but I'm going to be all right wherever I go. I'm still going to be Melo. I'm still going to dominate. And I might come back and punish you guys, but I'm going to be okay. They're betting on you. They're betting on you being the face of the team. They're betting on possibly building around you. You see what they did to me, and I'm a veteran in this league. So you better state what you want early. You better give them the message and let them know how it's going to be early. Because if you don't do it early, you're going to find yourself in a situation like I am. And I think that informed all of the moves that KP took part in early on, because he felt that the New York Knicks weren't going to, they wanted to sign him. What else do you have? They wanted to sign him. So he was starting to give off this, I know you need me, so you're going to have to meet me on my terms as opposed to meeting you on your terms. But ultimately what was happening was there was a player that was on the horizon that was going to be encountering his free agency, and that's Kevin Durant. And the New York Knicks was just like, all right, maybe if we get Carmelo out of here, We can reset with Kristaps, bring in a new coach that's going to work with him, and then we can move forward with a clean slate. But KP had already been contaminated. So when Fizdale came on, KP wasn't even trying to hear Fizdale. He was just like, yo, don't even talk to me, bruh. Don't even talk to me. I ain't even going to be playing with you. Don't even talk to me. So they kind of knew that they were going to request a trade because the rumors were out there that the New York Knicks didn't want to give Kristaps this full extension just yet because he was rehabbing from a knee injury and he was also approaching a season where Kevin Durant may come available. So they told him like, yo, bro, all right, we're definitely going to extend you, but we want to wait until like November or later on to see what KD does because that gives us flexibility to sign him if he says he wants to come here and play with you. Now, the other side and the rumors that came out was KP wasn't in agreement. He didn't want to share a stage with another star. He thought Carmelo, he learned under Carmelo long enough, and at the moment Carmelo left, the New York Knicks should build around him and make him the star. And I'm sitting there like, no one sniffed that level of thought process on Kristaps Porzingis prior to coming to New York. In his early stages, nobody sniffed that on him. That was something that was planted on him. And I think that was Carmelo. I think Carmelo was like, yo, they're going to try to box you out and get KD in here, and they're going to do you like they did me. So you should tell them, yo, build around me. I don't want to be side by side with nobody. Build around me. And that's when I knew it was just like, yo, Carmelo done corrupted him. Carmelo, yo, he was acting so arrogant. His brothers were acting so arrogant. Like, yo, do y'all know where y'all at? This is New York. What makes you think you can get away with that? So if, as a fan, I'm coming with that level of indignation, you already know how the front office in James Dolan was. Hell, James Dolan kicking a legend out of the Garden. So when you got this kid from Europe coming in here saying this, you already know what his mindset is. So crazy. So crazy. So that's ultimately, I'll stop because I know I've been talking for a little while now, but I'll stop. But that's a nice summary of kind of the way I felt, left a poor taste in my mouth, on my spirit about Melo. Melo is great. There's no denying Melo's greatness. But there were several points in time where I think he self-sabotaged his own career. He had an opportunity to win a championship by going to Chicago. He had an opportunity to be mega great if he would not have signed that extension and aligned with his brethren. Mega great. I'm talking about historically changing the NBA and having his name etched on the Mount Rushmore by doing that. Coming into New York and having this sense of what could he have done in a D'Antoni system if he would have embraced that? What could he have done if he would have stayed side by side with KP? I don't even know if that was an option, but had he not influenced KP in a way, and KP would still be here to be side by side with RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson. What would the path of the next franchise look like? Because all of his actions set us back mad years. But this is what you gotta love about a player such as Carmelo Anthony. As he reflects on his career, I'm in agreement with him. I'm completely in agreement with him. I think he's gone through a lot. I think he is 100% a Hall of Famer. He should be celebrated. But I think when you think Carmelo Anthony, it's a complex journey through ups and downs, but also undeniable. He made you look. He made you look, whether it's a star that's so bright that you can't, avert your gaze away from it, or it's the sun that's burning your eyes and doing you an injustice, but you can't help but look, or a car accident where you might get into another potential accident, but you want to see what's going on, even if it's not good. He made you look. He gave us a lot of moments. he deserves a discussion surrounding retirement of his jersey. Although we know Bernard King is there as well, but it doesn't take away from this man deserving that conversation to be had about him. And I love to end with this. He had this quote. He said, "I don't want to be just an athlete." I kind of obsess on that sometimes. I don't want my son to be reading, "Oh, disappointment. Just a scorer. Selfish. He didn't win enough. Never quite the best," or whatever it is they're saying. Damn, this man knew I was going to be doing this video. I want to be bigger than that. I want to shape my own destiny instead of just having him read about whatever's on the back page. I love this quote. I just wish he would have had this mindset in his second year. But with that being said, what's done is done. It's great to see Carmelo Anthony back in the Garden with the next generation. His son, Kyan. Super skilled. And for anybody who's talking mess, such as myself, Kyan Anthony may be in position to torture me for the next 20 to 30 years as he's going on a revenge tour to avenge anyone who says something sideways about his father. Anyone who owes him money is dead. Kyan Anthony is killing him. He don't care. Shout out the Paid in Full movie. But to have this playoff run that the New York Knicks recently went on, and to see Kyan Anthony and Carmelo Anthony going crazy in the Garden, it felt like love. It felt like he was where he was supposed to be. And for years, I always felt like, who's gonna retire Carmelo's jersey? Who's gonna retire KD's jersey is another question. To be that great and not know who's gonna retire your jersey. But Carmelo, it was also, up in the air conversation about who's gonna retire his jersey, especially Bernard King still hasn't had his. It's just crazy that when you ask that question about him, that another great's name comes up, which puts doubt on whether or not you should or you shouldn't. But I was happy to see that the New York Knicks is doing things the right way now. That we're finally in a position where the organization is healthy again. It's stable. It's bringing back the alumni and flawlessly ingraining them into what we're building. It's letting them know you're no longer a pariah. There's no longer an asterisk next to your name in terms of your relationship with the Garden. We're making amends. Now, it's going to be a hell of a day when we see somebody like a Kristaps Porzingis find a way where he's folded back into the mix. And you can see him and Carmelo Anthony some way, shape, or form side by side in the Garden again, celebrating our team. Or if Kristaps ultimately is back a part of this team and Carmelo Anthony's rooting him on in the Knicks jersey, that's a full circle type of moment. And I just think that those are some moments that we look at where we look at this picture and you see Carmelo Anthony's influence on a young European player. And then you look at this picture, one of our current, soon-to-be legendary players, if he remains healthy, and this is Luka Doncic, it can't be underestimated or overstated the impact that Carmelo Anthony has had on the NBA, on the sport of basketball in the United States and around the world. It wasn't always perfect. He didn't get the championship that he won, but that doesn't define him. And everybody can agree that it doesn't. What you can attest to is that the man worked at his craft. He showed up. He gave 110%. And he tried to set an example of who you should be on the court and off the court. There was very little, if no, off the court drama that wasn't positive or trying to help someone else. There were certain moments in terms of his family, but those things should be private. But if nothing else, I say to you, salute to you, Carmelo Anthony. It's tough to try to put together a pristine journey in the NBA. Not even the best person could do that, and Michael Jordan. Many men have tried and failed. But what I do tell you is I salute you. I salute you as a Hall of Famer. I salute you as an all-star. I salute you as a permanent fixture in Knicks Nation. So with that being said, congratulations on your retirement. Congratulations on your Hall of Fame status. We know that that's an automatic. And I look forward to you helping support this team for years to come and being there to join in with us as we raise our trophy up for the first time in less than 50 years. All right. So salute to you, Carmelo Anthony. I want to tell everybody, keep this in mind. Same thing applies to life, that applies to our team. There's no struggle, there's no progress. And not only are we here, but we here right now. Knicks Daily Edition. Peace.